Hi everyone. We are going to read chapter 12 of Charlotte's Web today called A Meeting. So here we go. A meeting. One evening, a few days after the writing had appeared in Charlotte's Web, the spider called a meeting of all the animals in the barn cellar. I shall begin by calling the roll. Wilbur? Here, said the pig. Gander? Here, 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 said the gander. You sound like 3 ganders, muttered Charlotte. Why can't you just say here? Why do you have to repeat everything? It's my idiosyncrasy, replied the gander. Goose? Said Charlotte. Here, 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 said the goose. Charlotte glared at her. Goslings 1 through 7? Beep, 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 said the goslings. This is getting to be quite a meeting, said Charlotte. Anybody would think we had 3 ganders, 3 geese, and 21 goslings. Sheep? Hee-haw, answered the sheep all together. Lambs? Hee-haw, answered the lambs all together. Templeton? No answer. Templeton? No answer. Well, we are all here except the rat, said Charlotte. I guess we can proceed without him. Now, all of you must have noticed what's been going on around here the last few days. The message I wrote in my web praising Wilbur has been received. The Zuckermans have fallen for it, and so is everybody else. Zuckerman thinks Wilbur is an unusual pig, and therefore he won't want to kill and eat him. I dare say my trick will work and Wilbur's life can be saved. Hooray! Cried everybody. Thank you very much, said Charlotte. Now, I called this meeting in order to get suggestions. I need new ideas for the web. People are already getting sick of reading the word some pig. If anybody can think of another message or remark, I'll be glad to weave it into the web. Any suggestions for a new slogan? How about Pig Supreme? Asked one of the lambs. Oh, and look, there they all are for their meeting. Oh, and look who else is here according to the illustration. All sitting there talking about what to write next in the web. No good, said Charlotte. It sounds like a rich dessert. How about terrific, terrific, terrific? Asked the goose. Cut that down to 1 terrific, and it will do very nicely, said Charlotte. I think terrific might impress Zuckerman. But, Charlotte, said Wilbur, I'm not terrific. That doesn't make a particle of difference, replied Charlotte. Not a particle. People believe almost anything they see in print. Does anybody here know how to spell terrific? I think, said the gander, it's T-double-E-double-R-double-I-double-F-double-I-double-C-C-C-C-C. What kind of acrobat do you think I am? Said Charlotte in disgust. I would have to have St. Vitus's dance to weave a word like that into my web. Sorry, 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 said the gander. Then the oldest sheep spoke up. I agree that there should be something new written in the web if Wilbur's life is to be saved. And if Charlotte needs help finding words, I think she can get 'em from our old friend Templeton. The rat visits the dump regularly and has access to old magazines. He can tear out bits of advertisements and bring them up here to the barn cellar so that Charlotte can have something to copy. Good idea, said Charlotte, but I'm not sure Templeton will be willing to help. You know how he is, always looking out for himself, never thinking of the other fellow. I bet I can get him to help, said the old sheep. I'll appeal to his baser instincts, of which he has plenty. Here he comes now. Everybody keep quiet while I put the matter up to him. The rat entered the barn the way he always did, creeping along close to the wall. "What's up?" he asked, seeing the animals assembled. "We're holding a directors' meeting," replied the old sheep. "Well, break it up," said Templeton. "Meetings bore me." And the rat began to climb a rope that hung against the wall. "Look," said the old sheep, "next time you go to the dump, Templeton, bring back a clipping from a magazine. Charlotte needs new ideas so she can write messages in her web and save Wilbur's life." "Let him die," said the rat. "Huh, I should worry." "You'll worry all right when next winter comes," said the sheep. "You'll worry all right on a 0 morning next January when Wilbur's dead and nobody comes down here with a nice pail of warm slops to pour into the trough. Wilbur's leftover food is your chief source of supply, Templeton. You know that. Wilbur's food is your food. Therefore, Wilbur's destiny and your destiny are closely linked. If Wilbur is killed and his trough stands empty day after day, you'll grow so thin we can look right through your stomach and see objects on the other side." Templeton's whiskers quivered. "Maybe you're right," he said gruffly. "I'm making a trip to the dump tomorrow afternoon. I'll bring back a magazine clipping if I can find one." "Thanks," said Charlotte. "The meeting is now adjourned. I have a busy evening ahead of me. I've got to tear my web apart and write terrific." Wilbur blushed. "But I'm not terrific, Charlotte. I'm just about average for a pig." "You're terrific as far as I'm concerned," replied Charlotte sweetly. "And that's what counts. You are my best friend, and I think you're sensational. Now stop arguing and go get some sleep." Isn't it interesting that it was the old sheep who convinced Templeton to try to help Charlotte so she could help try to save Wilbur's life? I mean, think way back to the beginning. Did the sheep seem to like Wilbur at all? Not really, right? So now here's this old sheep who also, in his own way, is helping Wilbur because he's helping to get Templeton to help Charlotte to help Wilbur. So I thought that was an interesting character change. What do you think? We're going to continue and we're going to read chapter 13, Good Progress. Here we go. Far into the night, while the other creatures slept, Charlotte worked on her web. First, she ripped out a few of the orb lines near the center. She left the radial lines alone as they were needed for support. As she worked, her 8 legs were a great help to her. So were her teeth. She loved to weave, and she was an expert at it. When she was finished ripping things out, her web looked something like this. Oh, so she kept the outside and these lines here. What did they call them again? She ripped out a few of the orb lines near the center. She left the radial lines alone. So these must be the radial lines because she kept all these. And she ripped some of the orb lines out of the center. I wonder if that's what they're really called in a real spider's web. Do you think they really call these orb lines? And these straight lines coming in? You think they really call those the radial lines? I'll have to check that out. A spider can produce several kinds of thread. She uses a dry, tough thread for foundation lines, and she uses a sticky thread for snare lines, the ones that catch and hold insects. Charlotte decided to use her dry thread for writing the new message. If I write the word terrific with sticky thread, she thought, every bug that comes along will get stuck in it and spoil the effect. Now, let's see. The first letter is T. Charlotte climbed to a point at the top of the left-hand side of the web. Swinging her spinnerets into position, she attached her thread and then dropped down. As she dropped, her spinning tubes went into action, and she let out her thread. At the bottom, she attached the thread. This formed the upright part of the letter T. Charlotte was not satisfied, however. She climbed up and made another attachment, right next to the first. Then she carried the line down, so that she had a double line instead of a single line. It'll show up better if I make the whole thing with double lines. She climbed back up, moved over about an inch to the left, touched her spinnerets to the web, and then carried a line across to the right, forming the top of the T. She repeated this, making it double. Her 8 legs were very busy helping. Now for the E. Charlotte got so interested in her work, she began to talk to herself, as though to cheer herself on. If you had been sitting quietly in the barn cellar that evening, you would have heard something like this. Now, for the R, up we go. Attach, descend, pay outline. Whoa! Attach, good. Up you go. Repeat, attach, descend, pay outline. Woo, girl! Step now, attach, climb, attach, over to the right, pay outline. Attach, now right and down and swing that loop and around and around. Now into the left, attach, climb, repeat. Okay, easy, keep those lines together. Now, then out and down for the leg of the R, pay outline. Whoa, attach, ascend, repeat. Whew, good girl. And so, talking to herself, the spider worked at her difficult task. When it was completed, she felt hungry. She ate a small bug that she had been saving. Then she slept. Next morning, Wilbur arose and stood beneath the web. He breathed the morning air into his lungs. Drops of dew, catching the sun, made the web stand out clearly. When Lurvy arrived with breakfast, there was the handsome pig, and over him, woven neatly in block letters, was the word terrific. Another miracle. Lurvy rushed and called Mr. Zuckerman. Mr. Zuckerman rushed and called Mrs. Zuckerman. Mrs. Zuckerman ran to the phone and called the Arables. The Arables climbed into their truck and hurried over. Ah, so there's what it looks like. I can kind of see it now, how she made it double line. So she did the line down first, and then she went back and put another one right beside it. So see how they're all kind of double? It does make it stand out better, don't you think? Everybody stood at the pig pen and stared at the web and read the word over and over, while Wilbur, who really felt terrific, stood quietly, swelling out his chest and swinging his snout from side to side. Terrific, breathed Zuckerman in joyful admiration. Edith, you better phone the reporter on the Weekly Chronicle and tell him what has happened. He'll want to know about this. He may want to bring a photographer. There isn't a pig in the whole state that's as terrific as our pig. The news spread. People who had journeyed to see Wilbur when he was some pig came back again to see him now that he was terrific. That afternoon, when Mr. Zuckerman went to milk the cows and clean out the tie-ups, he was still thinking about what a wondrous pig he owned. Lurvy, he called, there's to be no more cow manure thrown down into that pig pen. I've a very terrific pig. I want that pig to have clean, bright straw every day for his bedding. Understand? Yes, sir, said Lurvy. Furthermore, said Mr. Zuckerman, I want you to start building a crate for Wilbur. I have decided to take the pig to the county fair on September 6th. Make the crate large and paint it green with gold letters. What will the letters say? Asked Lurvy. They should say, Zuckerman's famous pig. Lurvy picked up a pitchfork and walked away to get some clean straw. Having such an important pig was going to mean plenty of extra work. He could see that. Oh, look, there's one of these big blank spaces here. What did we say that means when you're reading a chapter book and there might be a blank space left like this? Below the apple orchard, at the end of the path, was the dump where Mr. Zuckerman threw all sorts of trash, and stuff that nobody wanted anymore. Here, in a small clearing, hidden by young alders and wild raspberry bushes, was an astonishing pile of old bottles and empty tin cans and dirty rags and bits of metal and broken bottles and broken hinges and broken springs and dead batteries and last month's magazines and old discarded dish mops and tattered overalls and rusty spikes and leaky pails and forgotten stoppers and useless junk of all kinds, including a wrong-sized crank for a broken ice cream freezer. Templeton knew the dump, and he liked it. There were good hiding places there, excellent cover for a rat, and there was usually a tin can with food still clinging to the inside. Templeton was down there now, rummaging around. When he returned to the barn, he carried in his mouth an advertisement he had torn from a crumpled magazine. "How's this?" he asked, showing the ad to Charlotte. "It says crunchy. Crunchy would be a good word to write in your web." "Just the wrong idea," replied Charlotte. "Couldn't be worse. We don't want Zuckerman to think Wilbur is crunchy. He might start thinking about crisp, crunchy bacon and tasty ham. That would put ideas into his head. We must advertise Wilbur's noble qualities, not his tastiness. Go get another word, please, Templeton." Oh, there's kind of is this what you visualized in your head as I was reading about the dump? See how there's just kind of like old, discarded, thrown things away, like a bucket with no handle and old bottles, and there's his word crunchy that he took. The rat looked disgusted, but he sneaked away to the dump and was back in a while with a strip of cotton cloth. "How's this?" he asked. "It's a label off an old shirt." Charlotte examined the label. It said pre-shrunk. What do you think? Do you think pre-shrunk would be a good word for Charlotte to put in her web? "I'm sorry, Templeton," she said, "but pre-shrunk is out of the question. We want Zuckerman to think Wilbur is nicely filled out, not all shrunk up. I'll have to ask you to try again." "What do you think I am, a messenger boy?" grumbled the rat. "I'm not going to spend all my time chasing down to the dump after advertising material." "Just once more, please," said Charlotte. "I'll tell you what I'll do," said Templeton. "I know where there's a package of soap flakes in the woodshed. It has writing on it. I'll bring you a piece of the package." Now, what do you think soap flakes might be? I know where there's a package of soap flakes in the woodshed. Let's read on and see if we can figure out maybe what that means. He climbed the rope that hung on the wall and disappeared through a hole in the ceiling. When he came back, he had a strip of blue and white cardboard in his teeth. "There," he said triumphantly. "How's that?" Charlotte read the words, "With new radiant action." "What does it mean?" asked Charlotte, who had never used any soap flakes in her life. Soap flakes. So something that Charlotte has never used. What do you think that could be? "How should I know?" said Templeton. "You asked for words and I brought them. I suppose the next thing you'll want me to fetch is a dictionary." Together they studied the soap ad. With new radiant action. Soap ad. Here's another clue. Think about what you know about that word, soap. Soap flakes. What could soap flakes be? So we use clues all the way through here. What do you think soap flakes might be? with new radiant action, repeated Charlotte slowly. Wilbur, she called. Wilbur, who was asleep in the straw, jumped up. Run around, commanded Charlotte. I want to see you in action, to see if you are radiant. Wilbur raced to the end of his yard. Now, back again, faster, said Charlotte. Wilbur galloped back. His skin shone, his tail had a fine tight curl in it. Jump into the air, cried Charlotte. Wilbur jumped as high as he could. Keep your knees straight and touch the ground with your ears, called Charlotte. Let's see if this is what you visualized. Oh, look at him. Now I wonder if pigs can really do this. Or do you think this is more fiction? What would your guess be? Do you think pigs can jump into the air and keep their knees straight and touch their ground with their ears? Ooh. Wilbur obeyed. Do a backflip with a half twist in it, cried Charlotte. Wilbur went over backwards, writhing and twisting as he went. Okay, Wilbur, said Charlotte, you can go back to sleep. Okay, Templeton, the soap ad will do, I guess. I'm not sure Wilbur's action is exactly radiant, but it's interesting. Actually, said Wilbur, I feel radiant. Do you? Said Charlotte, looking at him with affection. Well, you're a good little pig, and radiant you shall be. I'm in this thing pretty deep now. I might as well go the limit. Tired from his romp, Wilbur lay down in the clean straw. He closed his eyes. The straw seemed scratchy, not as comfortable as the cow manure, which was always delightfully soft to lie in. So he pushed the straw to one side and stretched out in the manure. Wilbur sighed. It had been a busy day, his first day of being terrific. Dozens of people had visited his yard during the afternoon, and he had to stand and pose, looking as terrific as he could. Now he was tired. Fern had arrived and seated herself quietly on her stool in the corner. Tell me a story, Charlotte, said Wilbur, as he lay waiting for sleep to come. Tell me a story. So Charlotte, although she too was tired, did what Wilbur wanted. Once upon a time, she began, I had a beautiful cousin who managed to build her web across a small stream. One day, a tiny fish leaped into the air and got tangled in the web. My cousin was very much surprised, of course. The fish was thrashing wildly. We'll come back to this in a second. The fish was thrashing wildly. My cousin hardly dared tackle it, but she did. She swooped down and threw great masses of wrapping material around the fish and fought bravely to capture it. Did she succeed? asked Wilbur. It was a never-to-be-forgotten battle, said Charlotte. There was the fish, caught only by one fin, and its tail wildly thrashing and shining in the sun. There was the web, sagging dangerously under the weight of the fish. How much did the fish weigh? asked Wilbur eagerly. Oh, I don't know, said Charlotte. There was my cousin, slipping in, dodging out, beaten mercilessly over the head by the wildly thrashing fish, dancing in, dancing out, throwing her threads and fighting hard. First, she threw a left around the tail. The fish lashed back. Then a left to the tail and a right to the midsection. The fish lashed back. Then she dodged to one side and threw a right and another right to the fin, then a hard left to the head, while the web swayed and stretched. Then what happened? asked Wilbur. Nothing, said Charlotte. The fish lost the fight. My cousin wrapped it up so tight it couldn't budge. Then what happened? asked Wilbur. Nothing, said Charlotte. My cousin kept the fish for a while, and then, when she got good and ready, she ate it. Now, let's go back to this. I always like to read how the author describes the scene before I actually look at the illustration. So you can always do that, by the way. You can always just keep reading skip the picture, see if you can visualize it, and then see if what you visualized in your head looked like that. So see how there's the fish and it's sagging down the web, and there's the spider on it. And Charlotte said she would, through great masses of silk around it, or wrapping material around it. But she kept saying this thing like, the fish lashed back. Do you remember hearing that? So it was caught only by one fin, its tail wildly thrashing and shining in the sun. And then it says, there was my cousin slipping in, dodging out, beaten mercilessly over the head by the wildly thrashing fish. First she threw a left around the tail. The fish lashed back. Then a left to the tail and a right to the midsection. The fish lashed back. So what do you think that could mean? If this is Charlotte's cousin and she's throwing this wrapping material around, first to the left, then to the right. She throws it to the left and the fish lashed back. What do you think that means? Tell me another story, begged Wilbur. So Charlotte told him about another cousin of hers, who was an aeronaut. What is an aeronaut? Asked Wilbur. A balloonist, said Charlotte. My cousin used to stand on her head and let out enough thread to form a balloon. Then she'd go and be lifted into the air and carried upward on the warm wind. Is that true? Asked Wilbur. You just making it up. It's true, replied Charlotte. I have some very remarkable cousins. And now, Wilbur, it's time you went to sleep. Sing something, begged Wilbur, closing his eyes. So Charlotte sang a lullaby, while crickets chirped in the grass and the barn grew dark. This was the song she sang. Now, I do not know the tune that the author intended when he was writing this, and maybe he didn't intend any tune. Maybe he wanted his readers to make up a tune to go with it, so that's what I'm going to do. But this was her lullaby song to Wilbur. Sleep, sleep, my love, my only, deep, deep in the dawn and the dark. Be not afraid and be not lonely. This is the hour when frogs and thrushes praise the world from the woods and the rushes. Rest from care, my one and only, deep in the dark and dark. But Wilbur was already asleep. When the song ended, Fern got up and went home. Well, what do you think? What do you think about those stories that Charlotte was telling about her cousins? Do you think in real life, as remember, there's so many thousands of different kinds of spiders, but do you think one of those kinds could possibly in real life build its web over a stream like that, and if a fish would happen to jump up, it could get stuck in the spider's web? I wonder if that's really a thing, or is this part of what makes this story fiction, that the author invented that part about spiders? I guess we'd have to research it, right? All right. Until next chapter, hope you enjoyed it. Bye, guys.